Hey, welcome to the second devlog from my game House in Hand, a strategy city building game with deck building mechanics. In the first devlog I gave a brief overview of the whole project and where it's at, so if you're interested I'll put a link in one of those little cards. In that video I mentioned that my next step was to build a merchant system for buying and selling cards, and that's exactly what this devlog is about. Now it's been a bit longer than I initially had planned since the last devlog, but that's because something happened that's been absolutely horrible for my productivity. Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom came out, and I've been going absolutely goblin mode, or should I say bokoblin mode, on that game. Between work and Tears of the Kingdom, I haven't had much time for my game, so this video took a lot longer to make than I expected. Now that all my excuses are out of the way, let's get to the actual game development. In the game there are 4 buildings the player can build, and one of those buildings is the merchant. The merchant's role is to allow the player to buy and sell cards. Since the player can build as many merchant buildings as they want on their island, the first question to answer is how does building multiple merchants affect the actual shop system? The solution I came up with was to have the shop window that has panels for each of the merchants you've built. The individual merchants will have a rotating stock of cards that will refresh after some amount of time in-game. Each merchant will have a certain number of slots that will have a single card per rotation. Since upgrading buildings is a main mechanic in this game, when you upgrade the merchants, you'll upgrade the level of cards they provide and how many card slots they have. I'm considering allowing the player to choose whether the upgrade will give the merchant higher level cards or another card slot, because it could give more variety to playstyles. For example, someone could have a merchant with a lot of slots of low level cards, because their build focuses just on having a lot of cards. After I figured out the idea, I built a simple skeleton of the concept in Godot. I hooked up the buttons and everything, but it was only using random test data, so I had to hook it up to the rest of the game's systems. Before I could do that though, I had to make it actually available in the game. That's where this shop button that's been on the side panel but hasn't actually done anything comes in. It was pretty simple to show the merchant window when the player clicked the button, but it was a little more complicated to update the shop window with the correct data from the merchants the players built. Something I had already implemented was a global event bus that each of the buildings would call when they were first built. If you don't know what a global event bus is, it's basically a global class that just emits signals, or events if you're not using Godot. This way, individual entities in the game can fire off signals that the whole game can listen to. So with the merchants, I utilized that. The shop window listens to the global event of when a building is built, checks if the building was a merchant, and if it was, grabs all the correct data and hooks up all the correct signals. I'm having each individual merchant resource handle the card stock and the rotation of cards, so the shop window just listens to the merchant's signals and refreshes the stock when that happens. This way there's only one source of truth for the merchant's data, and it's the merchant resource itself. I use resources pretty heavily in my Godot projects. I think of resources as actual building blocks of the game, and nodes are just the runtime execution. If you're interested in a more thorough explanation of any of the code or systems in my game, let me know in the comments and I can make a video doing a deeper dive. I'm still not sure how technical to make these devlogs. I recorded one version of the script that was just 18 minutes of pure technical jargon, but I didn't think that would be very interesting. Anyway, once I had the shop working in the game, I had to make the cards actually cost money and go into the player's deck. This is very similar to how the building system works and takes resources from the player when building a building. I have the player stats set up as a resource that's globally available. Within the player stats is another resource called a stockpile. Stockpiles are any amount and combination of the game's 4 main resources: wood, stone, food, and gold, which I call material resources, not to be confused with the Godot keyword material or the Godot keyword resources. In coding, it's okay to do something dumb as long as you do that dumb thing consistently. Something kind of cool about the stockpiles being resources is that they have an instance of their own display node which is hooked up to the resource's changed signal, so every time the player's stockpile changes, the display in the sidebar automatically updates. It's not just the player's stockpile that does this. Every time you see gold, wood, or any resource displayed, it's using this system. The shop system can use this stockpile resource to very easily check if the player has enough gold, and if they do, take the gold from them, since resources can have functions within them. Stockpiles in particular have functions to compare stockpiles, which is how I tell if the player has enough gold, and functions to add or subtract stockpiles. Again, when the stockpile changes, the display will automatically update. Similarly, the player's deck is a resource as well, so giving the player the card is as simple as calling the function on the deck resource to add the card with the card resource that the shop already has stored. The deck already handles shuffling and dealing cards each turn, so after purchasing a card, it'll automatically get shuffled into the deck and then can be dealt to the player's hand at some point in the future. I'm still working on the whole shuffling and reloading of the deck system, so it's kind of just placeholder functionality for now. With all that in place, the merchant system is now working. You can buy cards, and the cards will reload after 3 in-game turns. The 3 turns is just an arbitrary number I made up for testing. I'm not sure what the actual in-game time will be. That'll come when I actually test the game. I did, however, forget to include the selling of cards, but maybe I'll include that in a future devlog, as I have to figure out the UI for selecting which card to sell and all of that. Anyway, as far as the next steps for the game go, I've realized that this game is going to be really hard to test to see if it's fun without all the systems in place. That seems to be a problem with strategy games. It's hard to prototype because they really need all of their systems working to get a good sense of the game. That being said, I've spent too long procrastinating and messing around with stuff, and I really think I need to make a push to finish the core game and make it playable. So that's my next step. I'm really just going to go heads down on trying to finish a playable version of the game so that I can actually see if it's fun. As far as the future devlogs go, I'm hoping to be more consistent. I'm still learning how to edit videos, so it takes me a while, but I beat Tears of the Kingdom, so there's nothing to distract me, except for Diablo 4. My hope is to have the next devlog out within a month, but we'll see how that goes as work is really busy and I have the forces of hell to kill. That's it for this devlog. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave a comment below. I especially appreciate any feedback on the videos themselves, as I'm still learning how to do this whole YouTube thing. Also, please like, subscribe, and all that other YouTube stuff. I hear it really helps with the algorithm, but more importantly, it gives me validation, and I really need that. So, thanks for watching.